Are you an HVAC professional looking to set your business apart? Then the Leading HVAC podcast is your go-to resource. I'm Kimon Hines, coach and trainer at SBE. And in this podcast, we'll share stories of success and struggle from leaders in the HVAC industry. You'll hear from experienced executives, managers, and innovators, providing you with the hard-earned insights from their journeys. These insights will equip you with the knowledge you need to navigate challenges and truly lead in the ever-evolving HVAC world.
Welcome to the Leading HVAC podcast. I'm your host, Kimon Hines, and I'm super excited today that we have another great guest. Before I introduce her, I want you to subscribe to this podcast if you have not already. So if you're listening to this for the first time, please make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you are listening or viewing this on. And by the end of this, I believe that you would have gotten so much value that you need to share this. So share this with someone else in a leadership role who can benefit from this conversation. My guest today is Shelby Breger. She is the co-founder of Conduit Tech, and we're just so glad to share the work that they're doing, the work that Shelby and her team have done already that is making the world of HVAC so much easier for so many people. So Shelby, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Shelby, I gave a short introduction, but I want you to tell us a little bit more about why you got into the HVAC business.
Absolutely. So my co-founder and I, we met almost 4 years ago at this point, and we were both so curious about how can we make this world where residential energy efficiency can be such a positive win for homeowners, a great win for contractors, and obviously great for our energy grid and energy independence. How can we make sort of those three things come together? And that was our initial question because we saw so much opportunity, yet not much happening. And the community started learning why you don't necessarily see a variable speed system in every single home, or why some of those other upgrades that can make a home really comfortable, whether it be add-on dehumidification or other IAQ solution in every single home. And the more we learn, the more we realize, wow, this job is exceptionally hard. And there are so many pieces here that somebody has to learn, somebody has to get familiar with, and somebody needs to develop a full skill set to be able to both sell and then install this. So that's what was the initial question of how can we close that gap? And we spent just a year learning from contractors. We'd go on ride-alongs, we'd call and just interview whoever would speak to us. And ultimately, that's what brought us into the trade, was just the open arms that we were received by, including by Kelsey from SBE. She was one of the people we interviewed before we really started building it years ago now to make sure that, what are the pain points that contractors are facing so we can help them sort of move our building stock forward leaps and bounds.
So for the benefit of those who don't know what Conduit Tech does, right, because this will help to answer the question, what problems did you see and what solutions you provided? What does Conduit Tech do?
Yes. So Conduit is a LiDAR-powered on-site HVAC design and sales tool. So what that means is we enable contractors to turn their design process into a sales process and do the two together at the same time. So for anyone who's ever done HVAC system design, a load calculation, a system selection, takes a lot of time, and it's typically not done in front of the customer. And the customers who are seeing that design work done for them, don't know how lucky they are and don't know the craftsmanship that's going into every single one of those jobs. And for us, we were like, well, this is a huge cost to contractors. How can we reduce that cost? And then also, how can we use this as a sales tool? So the contractor sees an immediate benefit, your sales conversion and ticket size increases, that can generate those results. And so that's where we really focused on building, is how do we turn that on-site home walkthrough and design process into an engaging customer experience that really closes sale. And tactically how it works, contractors will use our software on a LiDAR-enabled device, so an iPad Pro, for example. They'll scan a home, build out a 3D model, a 2D floor plan, an HVAC load calculation, and then they'll also be able to use augmented reality to be able to help a homeowner visualize both, this is my home, this is what my install is going to look like, and then this is the enhanced comfort I'm going to experience. And so that's how our solution brings it together today, is try to provide that engaging customer experience through design and through the work that needs to be done on every single job anyways.
Wow. Okay. So Shelby, how long are we talking? Because all of the things you mentioned, right? Being able to see the design and the homeowner to know what the install process will look like. how long is that technician in the home having to go through your software to be able to generate those things?
About 10 minutes. And in that process, the homeowner's hopefully coming with you. You can turn any one of the forms into a questionnaire that you're talking to the customer, like, oh, have your windows been replaced recently? Or tell me about your comfort concerns here. Oh, you mentioned that humidity is really high. Let's go take a look. The scanning process for a 2,000 square foot home takes about 5 minutes. And you're going room to room with the customer, as you likely are doing already, and bringing them along, but they're seeing their home recreated in an anonymized 3D model right off the bat. So they have both the comfort of knowing like, okay, this is that my information's secure, but also they have the comfort of seeing, wow, this is really customized to me and my home, and it's going to make me comfortable for the next decade.
Yeah. This is revolutionary, obviously, right? And those of you watching this, those of you listening to this, you can just imagine if you aren't using this software or this technology already, you can just imagine how much easier your world, your life will be implementing something like this. Shelby, I want to take us back just a little bit and we'll come back to where we are now. But you mentioned, how many years ago did Conduit get started?
Yeah, so we incorporated as a company about 3 years ago, which is pretty wild. And then before that, my co-founder and I have been working together for almost 4 years. So the first year was just honestly learning, what does the market need? How can we support contractors? And then using that to build out the foundations of our product. And let me tell you, the first few things we built and tested, not useful. And that was a huge piece of this iterative process, and how Conduit runs today is all about iteration and getting feedback, changing, improving, and then doing it again.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can imagine someone who is leading in the HVAC world, right? 'Cause this is the Leading HVAC podcast. What are some leadership lessons from these 4 years with Conduit that you can share with them that maybe they can apply, even though they're not running a technology company? But what are some principles that are applied to HVAC leadership?
I mean, so much, honestly. I admire and empathize so many HVAC business owners, because it's a hard job out there. And for us, we're a software company. Our team's distributed. That gives us, there are advantages of that. It's in some ways easier to operate and run than any HVAC business. But I think the first and foremost is have an amazing partner. I could not do this alone. My partner, Marissa, is just, she's a superwoman. She is smarter, kinder, a better leader, all of the above. So working with somebody who you admire, respect, and know that like has your back is probably the number one thing. I know I'm super privileged, and I know a lot of business owners are as well, that they do have a business partner that they can go about this with that has complementary skills, or is just phenomenal at everything. The second piece, and I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you, Timon, but is surrounding yourself with advisors and coaches who can help you. Because I think realistically, like when we started this business, we had no idea what we're doing. And we still, every step of growth, every time we level up and become a better organization, a bigger organization, that introduces new things that we've never encountered before. And so being able to lean on people who know how to handle these issues, who have encountered them before, either as a business owner themselves or have worked with business owners to help them overcome these challenges, is so meaningful. And so like I work with 2 different coaches, one who is a leadership coach and one who coaches me on how I do sales and marketing. My co-founder also works with a coach who helps her think through product and how do I set these strategies. And so I think all of those pieces are super vital, because realistically, like having a community of people you surround yourself with that you can learn from is so powerful. And I guess the third is a community. So we know so many other business owners or entrepreneurs, and the amount that we are able to learn from them is unparalleled, because they've faced these challenges before. They've thought about, how do I grow a team? How do I implement good processes? How do I drive adoption of these processes? They'll be able to say, okay, like in reality, that didn't work for me, but this is why it didn't work for me. And here's how it might apply to you.
I'm sure you're enjoying this interview with Shelby from Conduit Tech. I know I am. But I wanted to take a moment to invite you to a special opportunity that I think can help you and your business. February 27th and 28th in Orlando, Florida, we are hosting the annual SBE conference. And our theme this year is Thrive in 2025. As a part of that conference, we are having a special panel on AI. Discover how Bluon, Conduit Tech, Rilla, and WorkKeys are revolutionizing residential home services with AI and cutting-edge technology. Learn from these AI experts how to leverage artificial intelligence to grow and manage your HVAC or plumbing business. Whether you're optimizing operations or enhancing customer experience, AI is set to be a game changer in 2025. You don't want to miss it. So here's what you do. Go to sbeodyssey.com/conference. That's sbeodyssey.com/conference and register February the 27th to the 28th in Orlando, Florida. I can't wait to see you there. Now back to my interview with Shelby. You know, Shelby, I just love your answer there because you help us to understand that as a part of leadership, a lot of times we think, how am I going to do this? But it's like a book I remember reading. It talks about think who, not how. And you talked about the things that you mentioned are a complementary partner, right? That's the who. Having coaches, people to kind of guide in the process, and then a community of others who are doing similar things. And I think that's very instructive for all of us who are in leadership. Because a lot of times we think, I'm going to try to figure this all out on my own. But maybe the key is, who else can I partner with, come alongside, get in community with that can help me figure this out?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, as you are starting this business, and maybe this is another connection point, most of our HVAC companies have to stand out. And you have to start this new business and stand out. What are some of the keys that you went through, steps that you went through to get noticed in the market?
Ooh, that's a good question. For us, the number one thing was how we built our relationships with folks who could support us and who could help guide us. So we were just lucky early on that we built really great relationships with trainers and educators across the country who ultimately have become like almost evangelists of our company and our products. They have been so fundamental to the processes and the product that we've developed that they're also really bought into it. And they share it out with their audiences and share it out with people they work with because they were a part of that process of developing it and creating it. I think that was actually something that was very fundamental to us gaining our initial traction, was being able to really take into account what do the industry need and want through the lenses of business owners, through the lenses of those initial trainers and educators. And that's what built the product to be something that they could believe in and get behind. And I think in software development, we call them like our development partners. And that initial cohort of development partners, I think, was so fundamental for us to be able to reach that next level of scale. And still is. In fact, the best way for any of us to grow our businesses is word of mouth. And I would say that's one of the primary drivers of how Conduit grows, is when we have passionate customers referring other people to us. And that group of development partners was that first group. And so we never asked them to share out about us. But at a certain point, they finally were like, okay, this product is at a place where we're really proud of it and want to share it with whoever we can.
I love it. That word of mouth does go such a long way. It's one of the best forms of marketing. So Shelby, you have this amazing product. Have you encountered or seen any challenges from the technicians who are going into the homes, the comfort consultants who are going into the homes to use the technology? What are some of the challenges you saw with buy-in and adoption of technology and the software into their work?
I have to say, and I've talked to so many other entrepreneurs about this, the number one driver of is a technology adoption going to be successful is the manager, actually. It has almost nothing to do with us. We are going to work super, super hard, but what we need is the manager to be bought in and driving the process on the ground. And we're going to give them all the resources to do that. We're going to lead the onboarding. But even as simple as like the manager being physically present during those onboardings can go a long way, at least during that first one, because they're signaling to the team, like, this matters to me, this matters to you. I think the other thing that we've seen be a big driver is when those managers bring their technicians or their comfort consultants into the decision process. They may not actually take into account their opinions, but what we found is just including them in the initial demo, just including them in that initial conversation about a new process or a new technology completely changes the level of success that company feel with Conduit, and that we see right off the bat, because the people who are then using the technology not only see their management involve them in that process, but they also see that the management bought in, and then they also independently are like, oh, I can see the value of this independent of what my manager just forcing this down on me with me having no context. So I'd say those are the two biggest drivers of like what's going to be successful. And then in terms of how we try and support our contractors, it's the same thing that y'all at SDE are doing. It's coaching and trying to make sure that we're tailoring it one-on-one to each team. Because every team is different. You have so many different personalities. And while there might be, like 150 personality types out there, I have no idea how many personality types out there are, but like there might be, 1,000.
Yeah.
Neat combination of like 3 different technicians can create some interesting dynamics that every manager has to then learn to customize to. And so we try and make our process very customized, but also try and make sure that the manager is involved in it so that they show this is important to us and this hopefully is going to be important to you.
Yeah. Now, Shelby, I think you are a great example of this. The technology is changing the HVAC industry. What are some of the other changes from your vantage point that you're seeing the HVAC world? Some of them may be related to technology, maybe some aren't. But what are some of the changes you're seeing the HVAC world that a leader should be aware of?
I mean, this is, I think, the number one that we see, because this really impacts a lot of our customers, is rebates. Permit requirements are 2 very big things that vary by state. But in states like New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, North Carolina, we are seeing such an increase in just permit enforcement and what's required as part of that, load calculations and system design being a big piece of that. And then rebates, what's being asked of and required of contractors. And it's interesting because in states like Massachusetts, where they've had such a robust program called Mass Save for a very long time, homeowners are very well educated. They know that they can get a 0% interest loan from the state of Massachusetts, and that will determine who they're going with as a contractor. They won't go with somebody who is not a Mass Save partner because that's such a lucrative financial benefit to them as a homeowner that why wouldn't you? And so I think what that raises is the bar for what contractors have to do on every single one of these jobs. And I think that's a big change that we're seeing in certain markets happen first. But as we think about some of that IRA money that still may come down the pipeline, I wouldn't be surprised if more states see an increase in that, those requirements. And I think that can be a huge burden to contractors for sure. It can also be a huge benefit if you learn how to operationalize your business and run it efficiently, and then use tools like ours and other solutions out there to streamline those processes.
Absolutely. Now, we understand technology and it's helping us to do the work we're doing more efficiently. But what about some of the soft skills? And, are you seeing, or just any conversations you're having with contractors, what's some of the challenges they may be having with the other side, the soft skills and the conversation? What are some things you're hearing from the contractors you work with?
This one is so interesting. We have worked with now some teams for a year and a half, almost 2 years in some cases. And so what we've seen is the dynamics of their team composition change. And when we first started working with some of the teams, I'll think about one in Ohio, for all of their sales team members had been in HVAC for 4 or 5 years. And then they've grown over the course of our time working with them. They've added 2 additional sales team members. Neither of those sales team members has a background in HVAC. But they have phenomenal soft skills. Like you just want to talk to them all day. And they're really smart people. So what we're seeing is that, like, at least on the sales side, where we spend most of our time, we're seeing really talented individuals come into the industry that don't have a background in HVAC. And so the question becomes, how can we upskill these folks as quickly as possible so that they can feel competent and confident inside the home, and also identify the right solutions? And I think that's where we see a huge opportunity of technology, not just technology like conduits, but technology like Bluons, in helping that next level of development of skill, because it's so much you have to know in the home. And that's a big piece of how we think about our design at Conduit, is how do we continue to design for folks who don't have that HVAC background. But if you equip them with tools to help them close that gap very, very quickly, they're going to be phenomenal team members in the field really, really fast, because they know how to sell, and they also know how to build a really great relationship that's authentic and genuine with the customer.
Shelby Breger is our guest from Conduit. And what you just said there is a game changer. If I can get someone who may not have all the technical skills right out the bat, but they have amazing people skills, and now I have technology that can support them, I can get someone out into the field, a productive part of my team a lot sooner. And so this is definitely technology, married with great people skills does help us in our role as HVAC contractors.
Absolutely. And I think I think there's a whole generation of technology right now coming out, not just from Conduit, but from Rilla, Blue On, that is all about how do we help in each one of these domains? How do we help close that gap? How do we help support our new employees who are really smart and talented people, but maybe don't have to go through learning everything the hard way over the course of a 3-year period? How can we shorten that time period?
Now, Shelby, well, I want to, this has been so good, and we can talk for all day on this because I'm fascinated by the work that you're doing. But maybe someone who is a leader might want to know this question from you. What's like one unexpected obstacle that you faced building, growing this company, and how have you overcome it?
Oh, God. I mean, I think it almost, in some ways it gets easier and in some ways it gets harder year over year. I think the initial periods of building the company were really challenging because we had to figure out, what do our customers want? What do our future customers want? We weren't even selling anything. We didn't start really selling our product until April of last year. And so we're like, we had to figure out, what do people want and how do we tailor to it? Now we have a user base of very passionate contractors and customers who are so excited to give us feedback and send us so much that we are constantly reading through it, constantly evaluating and figuring out what to prioritize in terms of what we build next. But I think the first challenge that we faced as a company was like, how do we figure out what exactly people want and what's that difference between what they're telling us and what they'll actually use? And I think that was the biggest challenge early on. And now we have much more information. We have much more data. We have many relationships with so many different types of companies across over 40 states. And we can really evaluate each piece of feedback and understand, okay, like this is something that's really a common pain point for so many of our users. I think that leads to today's challenge, which is, at first the challenge was like, how do we even figure out what to do next? Or like, how do we prioritize like these very amorphous, high level thoughts? To now, how do we prioritize the thing that's going to be the most impactful for our customers today? And I think it always comes down to prioritization, and maybe is the summary of that, as I've like talked through this answer. And like the first piece was prioritizing way more amorphous concepts. And now it's more like prioritizing so much. And I think that's probably true for every business leader, is that there is so much work, you can never finish it. You will never finish it. So it comes down to, which pieces are the most important for me to prioritize now, and which ones are going to be the biggest impact on my customers and then on my business as a result.
I love it. Okay. Shelby, this has been great. We love to end our podcasts with a feature called rapid fire questions, where I ask you questions and you answer them in 30 seconds or less. And by the way, this has just been a great takeaway. Those of you who are watching this, listening to this, you might need to go back and play this over again and take notes if you haven't been taking notes already.
Well, don't take notes on the rapid fire because I'm so bad at these. Like nothing puts me in like a frozen place besides knowing that I have like 30 seconds to come up with an answer. But I'll do my best.
I probably shouldn't have told you. Okay.
No, we're good. We're good.
What's the best business book or resource that you've read or consumed?
Ooh, I am a big podcast person. So I listen to whatever podcast I can, whenever I can. And there is a podcast called 30 Minutes to President's Club, which is all about sales skills. And it's, for me, I have no formal background in sales. And so it's just learning different ways of approaching sales in different industries. It's mostly about software sales. But I think that I find that form of learning so helpful because you get to hear other people's talk tracks. You get to hear how they're approaching certain situations. And I love it.
I love it. Okay. 30 Minutes to Presidents.
Yes.
Okay. All right. What's one thing you want to be better at as a leader in the next year?
Everything. But I mean, that is one, we did one word. That's a cheating answer. I think for me, it comes down to probably ruthless prioritization of what's going to be the most impactful for this business. And then really focusing in on what I say is the highest priority and being very, very clear-minded and directive and strategic about it.
Okay. How do you de-stress?
Exercise, running, spinning, whatever it is, but definitely exercise and getting outside.
Nice. That does help you to think and be more creative, actually, too. Okay, so I have one more question after this. If you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice you would have given to yourself 4 years ago?
Move faster. it's crazy. Sometimes I look back and I look at how much progress we've made in the last year. And I know that progress wouldn't have been possible without sort of moving more slowly at the beginning. But I still think we could have moved faster because every year you sort of learn how you can like supercharge and become more efficient, better, and more focused at what you're doing. And so I wish I'd moved a little bit faster then.
I love it. All right, Shelby, this is the question I want to end with. How can someone sign up and get access to Conduit's technology so they can start using it today in their business?
Absolutely. So the first and foremost, go to our website and book a demo. And you will be able to see how the platform works live in front of your eyes. And then the second piece is if you're an SBE member, you are entitled to a 10% rebate on your first subscription. And so we would love to connect with anyone, both SBE members and non-SBE members, in either way.
What's your website again?
It's going to be getconduit.com.
Getconduit.com. That's GETCONDUIT.com. I know that sometimes I mess up on spelling stuff, so that's why I spelled it out. And go there, and especially if you're an SBE member, you get 10% off, and that's a benefit. If you're not an SBE member, for joining SBE. Shelby, thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing your expertise and your knowledge. Thank you so much for giving us time on the episode today.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. And if you have not subscribed, subscribe to the Leading HVAC podcast. Have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to the Leading HVAC podcast. If you would like to learn more about SBE, you can find us online at sbeodyssey.com. That's sbeodyssey.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would appreciate it if you would leave us a review on this podcasting platform. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.